All right, thanks for joining Sensible Politics one more time. We're about to give you another weekly episode of what's going on in politics today. And sometimes we do other things, but today we've got I guess the news has changed up. It's switched up a little bit. We're going to talk about Minneapolis, Minnesota. Not a place I'm too familiar with, but I am familiar with what's going on there. Chris, are you with me?
I am.
All right, you're here. Okay, we're gonna talk about Minneapolis, Minnesota. You can't like turn the TV on and not understand what's going on down there today. For those who don't, maybe you can go in and give them an introduction of what today's topic is about.
Okay, so, um, yeah, I mean, just go on YouTube and you can watch some clips. And uh, so I watched. Have you watched the actual? I think it was like 9 minute long clip of the guy on the sidewalk who. Okay, so the guy on the sidewalk. There's a lot of other videos where you would have news anchors talking over it, and or they're showing the security cam footage from like the different stores around. I actually watched the one where the guy videotaped it with his cell phone right there on the sidewalk,
So this
and
individual got everything from the beginning to the end. I'm assuming.
uh, the video started with the officer having his knee on his neck,
Okay.
but the his name was George Floyd, right?
Yes.
He was still alive, so I guess it started fairly quickly right after his knee got put on his neck. Um, and it's pretty damn sad because you can literally watch him. You watch him die, like from to the end. Like, and one of the last things he's 46-year-old man, and one of the last things he said was he was crying out, "Mama." I mean, that was tough, man.
We've seen this happen before. We've seen this happen multiple occasions. This actually, I was talking to a friend earlier. This happens every year on video. Same situation, similarly. Not every individual's life is equally special and important, but we see this thing happen every year. Sometimes multiple times per year, we see people die on tape, and in
Yeah,
this
but I mean,
instance,
this one. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, we might see like other stuff, but this video, it was like so close to him. You know what I mean? Like you were just in feet of him with the video camera watching it, and like I've seen other videos, but not. I think this one was almost like one of the most powerful, I guess.
why is it? Why is it? What makes this one more powerful than the 2 or 300 before?
Well, I think some of it is you were seeing like stuff that happened like on security cam with like no sound.
It was grainy. It was grainy and low quality.
Yeah, yeah. Or you're getting to see maybe a body cam or something that's edited, with stuff blacked out in it. I mean, this was just like raw and like within feet away. Like I think for me at least, this was the first time I had ever seen something like that.
Did you see Philando Castile's video?
Which one was that?
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago. He was the guy who he got pulled over by the police, and he said, "I have a gun in the car," and then the police officer, I don't know if he said, "Let me see the gun" or something, whatever happened, but he just started shooting him, like in the car. He just
Gee.
unloaded fire, and his daughter was in the back seat, and his girlfriend was recording everything while it was happening.
Oh yes, I do remember that now.
That was also in Minneapolis.
That was.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
It happened around the same time as another individual was murdered in Louisiana, and that was kind of the story. But Philando Castile was a school teacher, and he told that he had a permit. He's like, "I got a permit. I'm carrying a firearm." And the officer said, "Okay." And then he was like, "Show me the firearm," or something to that extent. And he just unloaded fire and just started shooting him, and while he was sitting in the passenger seat.
Yeah, I remember that because the crazy thing was is the girl was actually under the circumstances pretty damn calm. Like, yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
with a guy dying sitting right next to you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, under the circumstances. Yeah. So I mean, this has been happening more and more. Um, One of the things that I was talking about with my wife is how much more and how much worse was it back in the day when you didn't have video cameras all over the place.
If I can be a contrarian, it was no different to me. Seems like the same thing. Rodney King was caught on tape. Philando
That was like the
Castile was on tape.
original.
Uh, Michael Brown was on tape. Eric Garner was on tape.
Yeah, I'm talking like stuff that happened like back in the 80s and 70s when there wasn't.
When people didn't walk around carrying cell phones and stuff and cameras
Yeah,
on their person.
and all you were doing was taking the word of the officers that were involved,
Some of us were.
and
I never believed them, but okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Because all you had was hearsay.
yeah, and then look at the one officer who was standing there basically protecting his buddy so that his buddy can keep his knee on the guy's neck because the people who were on the street were trying to basically get him to stop, and his job was basically just be on the lookout for him.
Right. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the what do they call it, the shield or something like that, protect the shield, whatever. Yeah, they were all looking out for each other as police officers do. I think the a big issue, not the, because there's so many layers of this. One of the major issues is they say there are a few bad apples, a few bad cops, but there ain't never any good cops to stop bad cops in these
Yeah.
situations. Never. Nobody does the right thing. Nobody stands up to the police. And then it's like, what? The citizens are supposed to be the ones who stand up against the police so that they can get murdered, and the same thing happens to them?
Yeah. I mean, did you? One of the most disturbing parts. Did you see at the very end of that video when the third officer came into the screen to check the pulse after the dude had already been out for like at least 3 4 minutes, maybe longer, and the other cop still kept his knee on his neck while the other cop's trying to check for a pulse.
Yeah.
And the one cop who's trying to look for a pulse didn't even mention, hey man, maybe you should take your knee off of him.
Never.
Like,
Didn't say a word.
he just like puts his hand around so that he can try to check his neck while on the other side that's pressed against the freaking asphalt. Like, oh my gosh.
Now let's also go into the context. Why in the world did the officer have his knee on this man's neck to begin with? What got us to this place? What got us to
See
this
that?
place was a person called and said, I think this guy's writing bad checks.
I thought it was a counterfeit 20.
Okay, maybe it's a. Okay. Either way, we're talking about uh, insignificant amounts of money causing a person life. And it was speculation because it turned out that he wasn't doing that. And as a result of somebody just calling, this happens.
Yeah.
I think
Just like
he might be doing this. Come killing.
just like the dude in New York who was selling cigarettes and ended up getting killed in the
Eric
street.
Garner. Yeah. Selling cigarettes.
Yeah.
We
Not weed, cigarettes.
not even if he's selling weed, is that a reason to kill him?
No,
I mean,
but I mean,
but I'm just saying there's no crime other than murder and danger where a person's holding a gun and shooting at you to justify taking somebody else's life.
and Greg, you know what's the saddest thing about that statement that you just made? Well, the statement that you just made is absolutely true. But the sad thing is these mass shooters, they always take them alive.
They walk away and they go take them to Burger King.
They take them alive. They took those guys who did the Boston bombings. Those guys were taken alive. You have these school shooters all the time. You see the walk with the all these different. Who's that guy that did the church thing?
Dylan Roof.
Yeah, he was alive. All these people, all these shooters who actually were killing people, had a gun, actually shooting at people. They get taken alive. but these people with these petty crimes get killed.
Yeah, yeah. There's no reason to take a guy and say, I'm going to handcuff you, get down on the ground, let me put my knee in your neck over $20 or any dollar amount, in my opinion. But definitely those insignificant amounts of money when you talk about people on student loan people, they rip off kids for hundreds of thousands of dollars every day, and nobody puts a foot on their neck. You know, it's absurd.
Yeah, and the more when I watched that video, one of the things I took from it was is I think the reason why the police officer after a little bit in that video did not take his knee off, I think it was because the people on the sidewalk were telling him to, and his reaction was is I can do what I want because
I'm
I'm
in
the
charge
police and
here.
you can't tell me that I can't do this, so I'm going to keep doing it just because you told me I can't.
Right. Now, did you also notice every time he tried to move to get a little bit of oxygen, the officer put his knee in his neck a little bit deeper to
Hmm.
make him, to put him back in a position of discomfort?
Yeah, man.
I don't think there's any love lost for the police as a whole. You know what? Let me not get too far off. So let's stick to what's going on in Minneapolis before we start talking about the underlying things. Okay, so case is guy gets the police called on him for possibly committing fraud. Police officer puts his knee on his neck. Uh, Gentleman dies. As a result, 4 officers at the scene were fired from their job. No charges filed. No consequences for these actions. Just like, okay, you lose your job. Just want another life taken. So as a result, the city uprises against the police department. We get to the position where the people come out, go into the streets, protest, and then they start burning stuff up. Burnt down the police station.
Yeah.
Burnt down the police station. Now, the okay. Now I'm gonna preface everything I say from this point because I'm not gonna say anything political. This episode. Normally, I'm kind of cool and I'm calm, and I'm still gonna be calm. But I'm gonna say some things that people will not like. I'm gonna say some things that are really against the grain that I haven't heard said yet. Um, so excuse me for the people who listen to sensible politics, and and you get this sensible type of back and forth. Not that I'm going against you, it's not that. But so, as far as I'm concerned, if the mayor wants something to happen, the police department does it because the mayor is ultimately in charge. So I don't see why the mayor can't make the police charge this guy. The mayor is on TV like crying and moaning, saying,
Yeah.
and using these Beto O'Rourke talking points, and nothing's
Nothing's
happening.
happened. Yeah.
Nothing's happening. Like, you control everybody's job. And then they got this token black chief of police. It's like, why haven't you done anything? And I think it boils down to they're scared of the police union. The government is scared of the police for whatever reason. Because there's no reason for the mayor not to be able to get a charge. It seems like he
Yeah.
should be able, it should be one phone call away as opposed to a phone call to CNN and start moaning and complaining. He seems like a really nice guy, but he seems very ineffective because when you make these talking points, they're going to try to run you for president or something like that. So I don't know if he has political aspirations by saying these things that sound good to people. Like, oh, well, African Americans have been gone with this disparity for 400 years of after enslavement and Jim Crow and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Nothing ever happens. You don't seem like you're doing anything other than getting on the news and talking. Why haven't you made the correct phone call? I mean, why are you on CNN before you're showing up at the police department before it gets to this point?
Well, when's the last time anybody ever wanted to see the the mayor of Minneapolis on TV. Like he looked at it as an opportunity.
He could have done it afterwards, after he
Yeah.
made something happen. It seems to me like I don't want to accuse him of taking this opportunity and using it for political gain, but it shows that he's politically ineffective.
Yeah. I mean, he was saying the right stuff,
Yeah,
but
he spoke very eloquently and beautifully.
what was he doing? That's the
Abs-
thing.
exactly, exactly. I'm like, where are you at this point? So, last night or early this morning, they set the police station on fire. The people of Minneapolis set the police station on fire. Um, what happens before that is a lot of peaceful protests, along with some rioting and some looting and this, that, and the other. I don't really care about any of that. The fact that people stole stuff, fact that people vandalized. I think they blow that up and try to make it look like political unrest is somewhat like wrong. Do you see it that way? That the narrative is skewed to say that, well, if you protest in a violent manner or if you break things or if you vandalize, then that diminishes your cause. Do you feel that it's kind of steered that
It,
way?
this has been one of the first cases where I think they made the right move by burning down the police station. I I mean, the way I look at it is, I mean, everybody wants. I've been seeing these memes on Facebook with Martin Luther King walking and protesting, and they say this is a protest, and then you have looters in front of Target. This is a crime. I
Yeah,
okay, I get that, but I think it comes to a point to where after a while you can go out there peacefully protest in the streets, and then the day's over and you go home.
I think at
You're
the
not
end of the oh,
you're
go ahead.
not forcing you're not forcing anything to change. You're not forcing anything to actually happen by just going out in the streets and peacefully protesting, and no crimes were committed here today, and this was a nice peaceful protest, makes everybody all feel warm and fuzzy inside, but then nothing actually happens from it. You burn the goddamn police station down, they got to do something.
You have to put the fear of God into them for them to do anything. If you remember, after Rodney King, the L.A. riots, they burned that thing down. They went to work on everything, and it scared the government. Is scared the police department, not the police department as much because they didn't necessarily stop doing what they were doing, but they had to go about things differently. They had to start changing stuff around. So after the L.A. riots, it kind of put the fear of God into in LA, that we don't get away with this because there's some kind of unrest, there's some kind of ramifications that occur as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So when they burnt down that police station, I was thinking, what took so long? Why didn't you burn it
Mm-hmm.
down last year? you know, why didn't you burn it down 2 years ago? So I mean, I think ultimately you have to get to that point of violence, because like if people always say that Martin Luther King stuff, well, honestly, the thing about Martin Luther King, so people kind of take that narrative of peaceful protest and say being a peaceful protester is effective. It is not effective, because Martin Luther King, the fact that he was peacefully protesting and they had those marches and the march on the bridge of Selma. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that made Bloody Sunday significant wasn't the fact that they were peacefully protesting. It was the fact that they were peacefully protesting and getting their asses whooped on camera. The violence from the other side is kind of what pushed the Voting Rights Act through, because they saw it and it was so horrific. As opposed to, like, if the police didn't give any resistance and just let them march, you probably wouldn't have a Voting Rights Act.
Yeah. Yep. Now, so I guess it kind of seems like we're pretty much in agreement for the most part on most of this. The one area where I think we might disagree here, and I don't want to get too debated here, but one of the things that I don't like about this has turned into, again, the media loves to drive a narrative, um, and it's so easy to, especially when you watch these videos, just low hanging fruit. A white officer kills a black man, but I mean, this, yeah, that's terrible. But I think again we keep trying to. It's dividing people. So here we go again. Now it's like, okay, either if you don't think this was terrible, now you're racist. Um, I
Okay,
mean, it's just, well, if you don't think this is terrible, you probably are racist. But
why?
if you're not on the sides of the protesters, if you're not on the sides of this, um, then you are. It's just again, it's another way to divide people.
Why do you feel
And
that?
I
Why do
think
you
it's
feel
a
that way?
class. Because I think this is a class issue. This is the the police officer. The reason why he didn't want to stop doing what he's doing because he thought he was in control. He has a badge. Those people in the streets don't. You're below me. I don't have to listen to you. The exact same thing. This ties into what the government elites, where they think that they can do whatever they want to do. These senators who just got let off for insider trading, which is bullshit. Did you hear about this stuff?
Before you go too far down a different rabbit hole, like you're tunneling off.
Okay.
Do do you think that the only reason this is a story is because the officer was white and the person that was killed was black? Now, say for instance, this type of treatment is given to a white person. Do you think that occurs? Do you think white people get treated like that? And you think
I
this is just an isolated incident where a white police officer killed a black guy, and so that's why it's a story, as opposed to okay. So, do you think when you said it was a guy using his power in a way he felt like he was justified in doing, but are there instances? Do you feel like there are instances where white people get treated the same way?
I guarantee you, there's been instances where officers where it's white officers killing another white person.
Who isn't
Uh,
belligerent and kill him for nothing?
I guarantee you. I mean, because then I mean, you could have like some kind of you call him white trash or whatever you want to call him, some druggy guy. Oh, this is just some guy who's beneath me. I don't think
I've
it's
never
an
heard of any
issue.
of these instances.
Yeah, because it doesn't make it's not a good hit piece to go up on CNN because it's not a white officer and a black unarmed black man.
What?
So I'm
Okay,
not I not and again I'm
okay, go
not
ahead.
trying to let me please um clarify something here. I am not trying to diminish this situation whatsoever. Okay, that
I'm
is
not. I'm
not
not.
my
I'm not.
goal.
Well, I'm not saying that you are. What I'm saying is, when we get to the point where we're saying that the media is somewhat responsible for the way that we take it, doesn't the police bring this upon themselves? Because I think the old underlying issue is that if this guy would have been white, there probably would have been some consequences for it. Am I wrong to assume that possibly that had you been a law abiding white citizen, you probably wouldn't get murdered?
The chance I will agree with you, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast. Um, and I think the chances that if you want to do statistics are probably less likely that something like that would happen. Yes, I agree with you, but I
So
do
so
think
it,
it still
so
happens.
so with that, I don't know if we can say this is a media thing. The media blows this up
It's
to
it's
turn
almost
us
a
against
good
you.
thing that
And okay. So all right, before we go there, I don't feel like the media is turning us against each other. I don't think it's necessarily a thing of black people versus white people. I think it's a matter of I think it's a big story because traditionally the civil rights movement and significant social change has always come from the suffrage of black people. I don't think it's necessarily that they want to make white people hate black people. I don't look at it like that because I don't think the fact that one cop kills one black person makes all black people hate all white people. I don't think we're against each other.
well, I
If
hope so.
anything, if anything, I think we find out who's who based on the reaction. And I think you end up having people against each other because people are apologists for the police officers in a lot of cases. I think
Yeah.
that's where the problem lies. That people like that certain white people are kind of callous to the suffering and to the treatment of black people in America. I don't think it's necessarily a thing of black people against white people or white people against black people. It's black people feeling like, wow, why do we get treated this way? And then white people just act like it's not a big deal, or they say, well, he was resisting, or maybe he should have just complied, or maybe he shouldn't have been breaking the law, and they make all these excuses. And I think that's where the problem comes, not necessarily just from the action. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. 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 I hope this is something, because I truly believe if you look on like I listened to a few podcasts this week about that talked about this in there, and I listened to, surprise, surprise, and pretty right leaning populist type podcasts.
No, you.
And oh yeah, surprise, surprise. Um, but or I guess you could say very libertarian. That's really where I kind of identify more as a libertarian style. This is something that the right or libertarian can totally get on board.
Because they're
And
anti-government and anti-policing and shit.
exactly, this is something that can unite us. That doesn't have to be some partisan issue or something like that. Like there's a lot of people on the right who totally agree that this is baloney, and who are wanting to. I mean, if you look in that crowd, there's a decent amount of white people out there in the protests.
And I'm gonna hit that too. But I want to speak on what you're talking about. If black people don't make this thing as far as a racial thing, is there still room for us to come together?
Yes, I think that has to be the key with this whole play. This cannot be about whites versus blacks. This has to be about the institution versus the rest of us.
No, but what I'm saying is, I think the fact that he is black is the reason this occurs. Now, I think if you're coming from the libertarian stance, you look at it as an abuse of power and not racism. Is there still room for black people who feel like this is a racist act to come together with libertarians or uh, right leaning people who think it's just the police overstepping their boundaries? Can we still come together on that? Because if you're black, you feel like if he wasn't black, this wouldn't have happened. But if you don't address the racial aspect of it, I don't know that we can come together if you're
Yeah.
willing to ignore it.
I mean, I think our end goals can unite, and so I think you can find ground there.
Yeah, but with
I mean,
the thing is with libertarians, they don't believe that there's a certain libertarians are more lace yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, and everybody, this false level of equality, and they don't actually believe that racism is an issue. Usually, they don't see color. Am I wrong in that assessment?
yeah,
For the
no,
most
no,
part,
you're
libertarians will never say, "Oh, this was racism." No, they'll say it was wrong, but they won't really say it was racism.
yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. I think what that has shown by them being able to burn down the police station and them essentially just shutting that city down like the way they did is that this is a thin veneer here that the police and the government do not have as much power as everybody thinks that they do. They have that much power against me as an individual person if it's just them versus me, but them versus us, they don't have the power that we think that they do.
All right,
And
I'm glad you said that. Is that actually show of power to burn down a police station?
yeah, well, I because you sent me a text earlier today and you said, yeah, they let them, and
They
they
gave
kind
them
of
the
did.
police station. They left. And it was like,
They
fuck
did
it.
let them.
They left. They let them burn down the police station. If they didn't want to burn the police station down, they would have stayed out there and they would have defended the police station. I think they say, you know what? Let's let the people blow off a little bit of steam. Let them burn this thing down. It's just brick and mortar. We can get another one. We get all the people out, and at least we don't, we don't lose any casualties like the people did. We're not going to sacrifice any lives. We're going to get everybody at the police station, take off, go home. We'll come back in the morning and we'll handle this. And so they burned down the police station, with no resistance. They just setting the thing on fire. Nobody's bothering them. No, and then the next morning they brought SWAT and the state police, and Trump was talking about if they loot, we shoot, and so they regrouped overnight, and then they came back and they militarized, and then they cleared everything out.
Yeah, I guess they're bringing the National Guard. I heard a report that the mayor is the one that basically gave the order for them to evacuate the police station.
Give them the police station. Give them the battle.
Yeah.
We'll win the war. And then tomorrow morning we'll come out and we'll make some statements and we'll clean the whole thing up, and then everything will be forgotten.
Yeah, but I mean, you're making a good point. They basically did give them that, but I mean, you're seeing this. This is starting to spill over. Not just it's going all over the country right now. I mean, that there are protests. I mean, 7 people got shot down in Louisville last night. Um, Down there to protest. California, they got the freeways literally
Who got shot?
blocked off.
I didn't hear about this story yet.
Yes,
I've been on a golf course all day. I haven't really read the news. But what happened in Louisville?
in Louisville, they had a protest and like a mini riot. I'm not sure if it really went too crazy. It didn't get like Minneapolis did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 7 people got shot during that, and they were protesting something that happened back in March.
Okay. Which isn't that long ago, because everybody
we had the quarantine
started,
and everything.
Well, I'm just saying, like, they just started protesting them out Arbery. That happened in February.
Yeah. I mean, everything's starting to spill over. It's going over to all these different cities throughout the country right now. Phoenix is having them. It's starting to go.
Yeah, this
viral.
Domino effect happens every year. If you look at Mike Brown, it started in St. Louis, and then you have Freddie Gray in Baltimore. It always has it. It happens one place, and then everybody else gets mad because everybody else is sick of it at the same time. But every major city or major area with black people in it has these issues that they're upset about. And then one thing happens to become the catalyst to push, the next city to protest, to push the next city,
I'm just saying, if I can't believe I'm going to say this, but if this could be a united, if you can bring in the right can get behind it and group together on this issue. The right's got plenty of guns to come help.
Where are they? They should have came to help, because I actually was thinking that when it was about infringing upon our rights for coronavirus, the right was all over the place with their guns out, but the right is nowhere to be seen when it comes to the police killing and I mean, people are vocal. People on the right are vocal. They're saying things like, "Oh, it's sad" and stuff like that, but they ain't bringing their guns out.
I don't know if that'd be a good thing, though, man. I mean,
I'm not saying that they should.
I'm just saying that there's scary.
I'm just saying there's a double standard. Like, if you're saying you're about justice and you're about, and all those American values and freedom and stuff, it's like, well, this should be a case where you do the same thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, this is getting into the 2020's been a hell of a year, man. Golly.
Yes, it has. It has, and maybe you got a lot of protesting off of this because people ain't got nothing to do. Kids ain't got to go to school. People don't have to go to work for a while. So maybe that kind of like adds on to why this is such a big deal right now, and the fact the news don't have anything else to talk about other than coronavirus. So they're gonna keep running this. So, what else y'all want to talk about? Where do we want to go from here? All right, so Trump, they loot, we shoot. What's up with that?
Okay, that that sentence you said is not accurate.
It's not a direct quote. When they start looting, we start shooting.
That's not what he said.
What do you say?
Okay, he said, when the looting begins, the shooting begins. He didn't say when they loot, we shoot.
What did he mean by that?
Okay, so He said, when the looting begins, the shooting begins. Not about them or we or us or them. None of
Okay,
that.
what was he talking about?
Shop owners protecting their shops.
Oh, see, well, it doesn't look like like how is a person supposed to decipher that as saying people are gonna get shot for
But when you
breaking
say,
into
well,
stores?
I guarantee you, there's been thousands of other people that did exactly what you just did and
It didn't make
repeated the
sense.
word when they loot, we shoot. And when you hear that and then that gets repeated, that literally sounds like, oh, the black people are looting and the white people are going to come shoot them. Like, that's what that sounds like, but that's not what was said.
That's normally the case.
But that's not what was said, and that's not what he was
I'm
inferring
not saying
to.
that's what he said. I'm saying that normally the black people are always the ones accused of doing all the looting, when in a lot of cases I call them opportunists. Not necessarily protesters, not necessarily freedom fighters. I think the looters are of a different element, and I don't
Yeah,
like when they get convoluted with the message.
yeah.
When because the
They just
looters,
see an opportunity.
yeah,
That's all it
the
is.
looters are opportunists. They're not like people just decide they want to go out there and protest. Like, what, I'm out here. I think I'll break into a Walgreens. You know what? While I'm here, I think I just robbed a jewelry store. I don't think that's what it is. I think they're opportunities. A lot of times, those people aren't even from that place. They come from all over the place, and then come. It's like, oh, it's an opportunity to loot.
Yeah.
Thieves. So I don't like the fact that people always say, as long as you're protesting peacefully. Like, well, yeah, protesting is peaceful, but the people who are doing all the other stuff, that's something different, and I don't think you should even include them in the same vein.
Yeah, but so what he was talking about would be shop owners. Like, if you own your own restaurant or store or something like that, and you're trying to protect your store from being looted.
Is that
And
justification for shooting anybody?
man, I don't know. I mean, if that's
They got insurance.
some, they might not have insurance to cover that, and they're
Maybe,
looking
maybe
at trying
don't.
to protect their.
But at the end of the
They're look.
day, it's like, how many people are you going to kill for stealing potato chips or
They're.
TVs?
I'm not saying either one's right. I'm
I'm
just
not saying
saying
that you are. I'm just saying
that's
looting.
what that's
I
what
get what you're saying.
happens.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But I've never seen it happen.
Well, because most of the time when this, I remember back when Ferguson happened, there was this thing on YouTube where the shop owner and his family were like acting. They did this video with some interviewer, and they had like all these shotguns laid out and all this ammo, and they're like, "We're gonna stand here and protect what's ours and all this." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to find out, they like followed up on them, and like when uh, everything actually started happening, they literally just got in their cars and went home.
Because that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's always the what I would have done if I was there,
Tough talk.
Um, but
And hyperbole. I agree. I think Trump was just talking tough. I think it was a lot of hyperbole. I think a lot of what he says is you can't take it with a grain of salt. But I just want to know, what message did he think he was going to project by saying something like that? Like, if he feels like the media always misconstrues what he says, why does he always say it wrong?
yeah,
Why doesn't he say it in a way that's complete? Why, I know he's on Twitter and you only get a certain amount of characters, but he double tweets. He could say exactly what he means by that, but he doesn't. He leaves it up to interpretation. Just like I interpreted it one way and you interpret it a different way, he leaves it up to interpretation, and that's dangerous. Why would he even
well,
say something like that?
to be honest here, it's not really up to interpretation. If you just read the words, the thing is when you add we and they, when they loot, we shoot, when you add those words that didn't exist in the sentence, you have a total different interpretation, but that's not the sentence that was put there.
In the same
So,
context, he made statements like, "Well, if that coward mayor can't get it in order, I'll send the military in and I'll
yeah.
take care of it." That sounds like I'm gonna send them in there to kill you. That's what it sounds like to me. He said, if they can't figure out Chicago, remember when Chicago had a similar situation about 2 years ago? If they can't handle it in Chicago, I'll send the National Guard. I'll send the military in. I'm going. This actually, there was nothing going on in Chicago at the time when he said it. Just randomly, he said, "I'll send the National Guard and I'll fix Chicago." It's like, dude, we know what that
Yeah.
means. Well, maybe I decipher that as I'm gonna go. I'm gonna send the military in there to start killing people. That's how I take it.
Yeah. So this is the thing that you have to eventually understand, and maybe nobody ever will. But it just like we were talking about with the mayor, he said all the right stuff, right? Like
Yes.
so eloquent. But it's like, what the hell
And
is
he's
he?
got
What is
nice
he?
hair.
Yeah. What? But what is he doing? What's his actions doing? So Trump, I think, is on the opposite side of that. His words just vomit, like blah, 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 blah. And but then his actions, I think the actual policies that he puts in place and things that he gets done, I think are actually pretty good. But he can't his messaging and the way he says stuff is
It's
just
horrendous.
like, yeah. But so and there's people out there they say you got to separate it from the signal from the noise. Trump talks a lot of shit. He's always going at people all the time. And if what you're looking for is a eloquent speaker, and
Yeah, if you're looking
which
for a presidential president, this ain't the guy.
no, but he's gonna get some shit done, and
Whatever that is.
some of it's gonna be pretty good.
Okay.
Um, but
That's
he's
subjective.
not gonna be this great talker. But the thing is a lot of these great talkers who made us feel good didn't actually follow through with their actions. We talked about this on our last podcast with Barack Obama. Like what we were talking about with Obama last week, he gave this absolutely amazing speech. He gave a bunch of really good speeches, but
That's what
then
he does.
but what he actually followed through with wasn't necessarily the greatest. But I don't really want to get into gigantic about defending Donald Trump. Can we get into talking about the senators a little bit? Did you hear about this?
No. Are we talking about Klobuchar or what?
No, where the insider trading with the senators and they didn't prosecute him.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just this issue with the Minneapolis, and then with these senators, it just shows again, it's all about the ruling elites, the people above you, and everybody else. I mean, these guys they went into a meeting prior to the coronavirus hitting the United States, and they knew all the facts prior to them doing any shutdowns. The stock market's still at its all-time high that it was at, and
Mm-hmm.
then they get out of this meeting and they sell all their stocks. That is insider. That's a definition of insider trading.
When has anyone ever gone like Wall Street is a movie and Buzz? What was it? Was that Buzz? No. Uh what was the guy's name from Wall Street? Uh,
Like Jordan
Gordon Gecko.
Belfort.
Gordon
Oh,
Gecko.
okay.
There are no real Gordon Geckos. Like whoever went to prison for insider trading, like really.
There's a lot of people.
White collar crime does not have severe consequences. Like
Madoff's
after
still in prison.
Bernie Madoff, that's the only one I can think of. But when you look back after what happened with all the mortgages and the 2008, when you look at all that, there weren't any banks that I mean they went under. Like AIG, I think went under, and you know Lehman Brothers, but there were no consequences for the actions
Yeah, but
to Wall Street.
when you're dealing with a senator who's an elected person who's supposed to have great integrity and out for the best of the people, and their first thing is how can I enrich myself? Um,
But everybody does that. So you saying that they should be held to a different standard because they're? I mean, I would think that they would be held to a lower standard because if you're a criminal and you're the president, you ain't going to jail. They might take you out of office, but you're not going to prison.
I don't know. There's just no consequences for people that do stuff like this,
I agree there
and
should be consequences. I totally agree. It is insider trading. I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. It is definitely insider trading. They're definitely in the wrong for doing it, but I think maybe you might be a little naive to think there are going to be consequences for it.
And that was a bipartisan thing too. I think there's three of them, and I don't remember exactly who they were, but I'm almost positive there's a Democrat and a Republican and
There
somebody
were,
else involved.
I think
Yeah,
so.
it wasn't just Democrats, it wasn't just Republicans.
Well,
Um,
but stealing isn't a Republican or Democratic thing. Now, I'll go as far as to say I don't see a difference between Republicans and Democrats. I think they're all a bunch of actors. Like, I don't believe nothing from any of them. I don't think there's a good side and a bad side. I don't think that just because you lean to vote towards a certain way means you justify their actions either.
yeah,
Like, I've never voted for a Republican, but it don't mean that I don't think Democrats are foul. It doesn't mean that I don't think people are people at the end of the day. People are going to look out for their own self interest. Now, when we talk about the insider trading, yeah, they should go to jail. I don't think they will, though. Just like I don't think that a police officer who kills a person is going to have any consequences, just by history.
yeah. Now I will say I don't know if you heard this today, but it happened this afternoon. They ended up taking him in custody and putting that police officer in jail.
Still a long way to go.
Yeah, yeah, and it let him get a light sentence. This
They,
is going to happen all over again.
yeah, and you look at that farce of both of them, Jean and Amber Geiger. Like, how much of a joke was that? She walked up into another person's house, killed him. She got 10 years. Should probably do half of it. Get off on good behavior in 2.5 years. So even if with a conviction, there's still a lot of there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other officers that were involved, they need to be prosecuted as well.
As if they were accessories to murder.
Yeah, I mean they were right. They let it happen, man. I mean, and especially that one Asian dude that was his little guard dog for him.
Yeah.
That dude definitely because he was holding people back so that they couldn't stop it.
Okay. Now here's another thing. I saw something. Okay. So usually, like you say, the media is turning us against each other. I normally see some media propaganda in the opposite direction. Normally, there's a what would you call it? Like a where they try to direct you in a different direction. So after oh my God, what is that gentleman's name? That young man who Ahmaud Arbery. After he was killed, the media started to circulate a story about a guy in Indianapolis who got killed by the police, who was like running around acting a fool. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah,
That was
yeah.
on video. Like he was like Facebook living or something like that,
Hmm.
and the police killed him because he was shooting guns off at him or something to that effect in Indianapolis. So that started to circulate as a result. Now, normally, whenever there's one thing, there's something to kind of misdirect your thinking to kind of justify it. So, this first case, you got white police officer puts his knee on the neck of a black guy, kills a black guy. So then there's this spin where I saw actually already today where they're talking about this black cop who choked out some kid or something like that. And to me, like, all right, we're trying to misdirect. we're working on misdirecting the situation to make it seem like there's no racial aspect to it. To like, for some reason, there's always this thing where we want to pull away the racist aspect of it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if over the next couple of days there's going to be some spin because what you mentioned earlier, you saw a lot of white people out there. And people always say, well, the one thing that they never want is for us all to come together. They never want us to come together. The protests in Missouri, no, Minnesota. Minnesota. I'm saying Missouri. Yeah, it starts with M, ends with I. But, no, it doesn't actually. But, but one thing I've seen actually, even with Ahmaud Arbery, was way more white people than I've ever seen protesting. I've never seen white people in the front lines with black people in these situations. Why is it different now? Are white people just sick of it? Like, why is it white people are starting to come on board? Like, white people weren't defending Trayvon Martin. White people weren't defending Michael Brown. White people weren't defending Tamir Rice. They were saying, shut up and play basketball. They were saying, get off your fucking knee and quit disrespecting the flag. They weren't on board then. What has happened in this last year to make white people kind of, I don't know, are they more aware of what's always been in front of their faces?
Hmm.
Do you
Uh,
notice that? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of white people protesting. White people don't normally protest with black people. This is
yeah,
like Martin Luther King had to beg white preachers and ministers and stuff. He's like, hey man, if you believe in the Bible, where y'all at?
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of it is the younger generation as well, and we had talked a little bit about this on at a period before about how I think each generation, as far as race, it slowly gets better and better and better.
But do you believe that the two
Um,
generations before us sucked at it?
I think that the way I handled things versus the way my parents handled things, and then versus the way my grandparents handled things, I really think. And then what I see with my kids, like I see progression in the for the better.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Back in, if you go back 2 generations, they were like really making progress, and then there was a like a digression for 2 generations, and then our generation kind of picks up where 2 generations ago left off. Like we do
Hmm.
better than them, but they did worse than the generations before them. Is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Do you notice that? Like your parents and grandparents probably weren't the people who were people their age probably weren't the well, I don't know, they might have been. I mean grandparents, but if you look at it like the Civil Rights Act 1964, when you look at the anti-war movement and all that stuff,
Hmm.
those probably weren't our generation, our parents' generation, probably your
No.
grandparents' generation. But if you look over maybe the 70s and the 80s, there was like nothing.
Yeah.
There was a
I will say, look, there was this old guy I was talking to one time, um, back when I was selling washers and dryers back in the day, um, and he was he was around there back in the '60s and stuff,
mm-hmm.
and he said that there was a lot of interracial dating and all kinds of stuff going on right at that time, and I was like, really, back then? Because I thought it was like since I've been around, like you see it more and more. And he's like, yeah, because they became our equals. And before that, that people just the culture just didn't look at it that way. And so right in the '60s, like it was just all free love and everybody mingling together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all the way up through the 90s, like I've seen. All right, well, let me get controversial. I've seen more biracial children in this generation than ever were before. Like I look at it like people like my age were kind of the first biracial children. There weren't very many of them, but now you see a lot of
Hmm.
them. You ever seen the movie Bulworth with Warren Beatty
Movie?
and Halle Berry?
No.
Okay,
Oh
so
wait, what did you call it?
Bulworth. He was a
Bulworth? No.
he was like the governor of California, and he like kind of went rogue one day, and he just started like telling the truth. So he was a politician, and no, he was like your liberal, Clinton liberal. And then one day he just decided to start telling the truth about everything. Like he got sick of lying about everything, and he wanted to die. So he said, "I just might just start telling the truth about everything." So one thing he said, they said, "Well, what do you think is the answer to racism?" And he said, "Well, we all keep fucking each other until we're all the same color."
Yeah.
I think we have kind of got to the point where we're starting to become the same color. Like there are a lot of white people, lily white, all the way white people, but black kids, black grandkids that have to have a certain sympathy or a certain empathy and understanding to the situations that their black children and grandchildren have to endure. And I think that forces them to kind of move differently.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a family,
That doesn't have
somebody,
another
at
race in
least
it.
some, yeah, yeah, at least somebody within that family that has. I mean, we have Christmas get-togethers as our family, and it's not all just white folks there.
Yeah,
Um, and so, I mean, I think you're really hard pressed to find that it's just nothing but white people in your family.
yeah. And I
I mean,
think,
my daughter's biracial, so I mean, my daughter's half Asian, so it's not right there. I mean,
yeah. And I'm like, honestly, I feel like possibly like people of the generation before me probably didn't have friends of the other race because if you look at that timing, you're looking at busing, you're looking at a lot of unrest in the 70s going into the 80s
mhm.
where it was kind of forced upon everybody to integrate. I don't think they had like friends of other colors. Now, I think everybody, all the kids now have friends of other races.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, to what you were saying, I think there is some progression. I think there was some stagnation for a little while. But this generation is different. They are different. And the best thing for us to get is to get rid of old people like Biden and Trump. How would I just squeeze that in and segue into these old white guys? But not against old white guys. Bernie Sanders seems like a nice guy, but he's he's got some issues. He needs, I don't know if old people are the answer, but neither here nor there. Shouldn't have said that. Doesn't matter though. So, what do you think we're going from here? Do things get
well,
better? I mean, if we get a conviction, does that make the world a better place? Probably not, because it doesn't.
probably not.
Because I think you got this issue all over the place. How do you
Yeah,
get to the point where white people stop looking at black people as less than human? And I'm not saying every white person, but
yeah,
all it takes is one.
yeah. I don't know. I think this is all just part of. This is something that you can get people from on the side of the fence where I'm sitting with the libertarian, anti-government, smaller size of the government. Like I think this is just one area of so much corruption that needs to be rooted out, and hopefully maybe this can be something where we can all come together from both sides, and I mean start a
Both sides,
revolution.
as in the right and the left.
Yeah,
Do you think
that
the right missed a great opportunity with this?
yeah, absolutely freaking lootly.
They could have sacrificed those police officers. I don't know why they never do. They could have sacrificed those police officers for the betterment of society.
I mean, well, I mean, it's just yeah, the right should have just been right behind it from the beginning, and I don't understand it. But I will tell you, there's a lot of libertarians that and parts of these libertarians are groups that some people would consider the alt right, who are on the sides of the protesters on this.
Maybe the
And
libertarians need to quit keeping bad company, and people wouldn't call them the alt right.
yeah, so
They
I
need to
mean,
quit being buddy buddy with the alt right and agreeing and justifying everything the alt right does, and call the alt right out for who they really are.
I think I look at that as just the exact same thing as generalizations that somebody would make about a black person, I guess, right?
No, I
I
don't even
mean,
understand what you mean by that.
I
There's
I don't
no
know.
factual justification to generalize black people. I mean, if you go by what you see on TV and make assumptions, but if you actually know
Yeah,
any black people, we're all pretty different than each other.
yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that I look at this as an opportunity where maybe they can start a revolution. I think there's just so much corruption, so much bad stuff that's been going on throughout the government, that they overplayed their hand on this coronavirus stuff. And that's the crazy thing. Everybody wants to get all up in arms with this and don't trust the government, don't believe the police officers. But then when the police officers are enforcing the executive orders put in place for coronavirus, oh, we have to listen to that. But it just, I don't know. I, I come at it from a little bit of a different reason, and not just that this was a terrible issue, but you also lump that in on top of all the other issues. It's just like,
Well, I'll be honest with you. Black people don't play when it comes to getting sick and disease. We don't fool with that stuff. We don't play with viruses, man. Like that's why we are like laying low key. We don't want to go out. If you go out, you're gonna see a whole lot of black people with masks on. The kids got masks on, like they're not messing around. If you even look at the protests, like everybody got a mask on. We don't play with disease. Now, the people on the right, they're a lot more brave and like, no, we don't play with no disease. Despite the fact that we may agree that maybe the government is overstepping their boundaries, but they ain't got to overstep with us anyway because we ain't going no damn where.
yeah.
We ain't playing with it. You know, we'll watch and see what happens. I'll sit back from the sideline.
So we'll see where this goes. Hopefully, this doesn't get too insane.
Or hopefully it does.
I mean, I will
Hopefully
say,
people don't get hurt.
yeah.
But maybe things do need to get insane. I've been thinking that for years. That got to take a step further. Got to go further with this.
I mean, when America became America and fought the British, it wasn't no peaceful protests in the streets, and the king decided to let us become a country. Like,
Yeah, I know exactly. So I don't see why we have an issue with protest in this country of all places.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. I mean,
One other thing I want to hit. Oh, go ahead. If you
I,
had something you want to say, I'm sorry.
it's just you're walking a fine line with what I'm saying here. It's just because I don't want to be inciting violence. That's the fine line.
Let me ask
But
you a question. You think people are still mad at Kaepernick after this?
I I still don't agree with Kaepernick, but
Oh
I don't
my
want to get it.
god.
I agree with what Kaepernick stood for. I don't agree with the way he did it, but that's that. I don't think the way he did it's ever going to
So he ain't
change for
playing next
me.
season. So pretty much you don't think he's playing next season. I don't think he is. I don't think he's ever touched another football
No,
and get paid to do
no,
it. But yeah.
he didn't. He didn't want to play, man. He had an opportunity.
We're not getting on that. We're not a sports podcast. If you want to go hear a sports podcast, get one from ESPN or something. We're not gonna go
All
into
right.
that. But and then one other thing that I want to ask you:
Mm-hmm.
where do we go as a society to from this? Okay, so we just saw another person get murdered. It looks like black people and white people are coming together. How do we build momentum upon this, or do we all just forget about it? Because that's what normally happens. Something like this happens. 2 weeks later, they stop talking about it in the news. People ain't got nothing else to say about it. They forget about it.
Yeah, something else happens,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then they
and,
just
and it's a new news story. I think they did this. I don't know. I think they like pushed this story to cover up the fact that that SpaceX thing. Man, they wasn't going out of space, man. They ain't never been nowhere. They're not going to
that,
the moon. None of that stuff. That stuff ain't real, man. They were on camera and it was like, oh man, we gotta go to the moon because everybody's watching now. They got the technology to follow us. What are we gonna do? Oh, let's say the tornado stopped us. Hold on, man. Now let me stop. I'm gonna stop that. I'm gonna leave that for a conspiracy episode. I'm done. I'm done. You got anything else you want to say?
No, just a hell of a fucking year, 2020, man. I was excited about this year.
Yeah, tell 2020 to go.
Hopefully,
2020
we're
can go
we're
fuck itself.
we're halfway through it, basically. Hopefully, the second half's way better than the first. Um, America's got some. I think we're gonna be going through some crazy crossroads here in the next few years.
It's
So,
crazy. We already almost halfway through this
yeah.
year already. Wow. You thought 2018 was a bitch. In 2019, 2020 said, hold my beer.
Hmm.
Shit. All right, cool. All right, we'll do it again next time. Thanks for
All
tuning
right,
in, Sensible Politics. I'm your host, Greg, with my co host.
Chris.
We love you.
Have a
Thanks
great
for supporting.
have a great night.